Hey, Sucker Nathan with Land Title, and we came to bring you your lender update for the month.
All right, let's kind of jump right into it. So, what we're seeing from the lender side and for your buyers out there is we're seeing a decrease in inventory. And it's not because it's getting purchased necessarily. Some of it's expiring. Sellers are frustrated. They're taking things off the market. And that's good and bad, right? For you guys. But out there, we're also a little bit down under contract month over month. So, we normally have a little bit of a dip. We should be seeing a little bit of a jump here into this month into August, from August into September. So, that will be a good sign. We did see, our inventory really came down quite a bit. So I think that's really the big thing to notice is we're down about 5.5% in our inventory. And then our solds are actually doing okay month over month. And then even year over year, they're actually pretty good for August. So we have some positive news there in our solds. So we have a little bit of momentum, I want to say. I don't want to get too optimistic, but we have a touch of momentum.
Yeah, there's definitely some more showing traffic, which generates more under contracts. I'm sure you guys are feeling that. But because of all that elevated inventory and the frustration on the seller side, prices really have come down.
Oh, yeah.
By about 3.7%.
And we'll be touching on that.
Take a look at this. Let's break it down detached and attached separately by inventory, right? So this is one of those spots where the detached market, our golden child in Boulder County that's always, seeming to do well. You can really see over the past 12 months and just year over year kind of where we're sitting. City Boulder, this is like the third year in a row. We basically had the same inventory level, 400 units. It's just, if people don't like the price, they're not going to sell their house. And so they're not, right? And so you see pretty stable environment in the city of Boulder. Now, where you're really feeling a lot of the fluctuation, Longmont is having a rise in inventory, maybe more so than before, but it's because they had a lower level of inventory than everybody. The higher end stuff, so somewhere like Niwot, more inventory sitting on the market. Luxury really has been struggling quite a bit as far as getting it under contract, maybe not the issue. There is definitely some, but there's so much demand.
Yeah.
That's creating this environment where, maybe not everybody wants to sell, but it's also things are lingering longer.
Yeah.
We definitely are seeing some good solds in the luxury market, but Niwot reflects the luxury market so closely. That's kind of why you're feeling that.
And then we also see some of those other markets outside of the city of Boulder. They've also had a pretty large drop. Some of these sub-markets had a pretty large drop month over month in their inventory. Really looking at Erie, in Louisville and Superior, they've had, almost double digit for Louisville, 18%, Erie over at 11%, and then Superior at 7.5%. Those are pretty significant drops when we're thinking about the number of units out there.
Frustrated sellers bringing stuff off the market. Now, on the flip side of that, we talk about the attached market, and this is so different than the detached market. The city of Boulder has had this super high elevated level of inventory. You got frustrated sellers pulling stuff off the market there. 11% drop in active units of inventory. Erie, 40% drop in active units of inventory. But keep in mind, there's not a ton of attached. These are more like a townhouse product. So this is almost the flip side of what you would see in Boulder. But it could be good news. Some of that's going under contract. The city of Longmont, though, 7% more inventory. Good sign for them, I think. If you're working with buyers out in that market, I think that's a a great market to be in, right?
And they have also a lot of nice new product too. They don't have the same city of Boulder issues with the old condos.
They definitely have some of it, but they just don't have
some new, and then they have some old, of course. But they also have more new stock that's in that more affordable price range.
All right, so month supply of inventory, Tucker, detached single family.
Yes. So this is really what we're looking at. We're at 4 months supply of inventory, right? That is favoring your borrowers, your buyers out there. So the cards are still stacked for them, stacked against the seller. But let's kind of look into our sub-markets here on the lower left, right? Boulder, we're at 5.2 months supply of inventory. That is a buyer's market. This is where you can really keep pushing. What we're seeing and hearing, people are getting what they want when they ask for it, as long as it's, even moderately within reason. But then as we get into the Louisville, Lafayette, and Superior, we drop quite a bit in that month supply of inventory. And it just shows those markets are moving a little bit faster. So it depends on where your clients are shopping. So just remind them, hey, if we're out in Louisville, Lafayette, Superior, it's going to be going faster. It's going to be going faster than Boulder. We're not going to have as many cards stacked in our on our side of the table. So you're going to want to help coach them on what they can and how far they can push, but then also work with those agents on what you can ask for. Then when we jump out to Erie, I was just going to jumping out to Erie as well. They're still lower than Boulder, and then Longmont as well. So it's really Boulder is the highest month supply of inventory, and the rest of the sub-markets are excluding Niwot. They're always a little bit of a funny one with the numbers, but outside of that, it's a little bit less buyer favored when you get outside the city of Boulder.
So if you get into the attached market, it's kind of the opposite. Flip side of the coin, everything is very similar to where Boulder was sitting in the detached market. We're talking 4 to 6 months of inventory across most of those, right? You can see month supply of inventories at 5. These are all buyers markets. The only one that sticks out here is Erie because there's just not as much inventory. And we're not building as much of that because there's so much more detached product out there.
Mm-hmm.
But just know you can be way more aggressive in the attached market if your buyers are looking in there.
It can be very, very aggressive.
Yep.
I've been looking at some stuff in my neighborhood, and there's some opportunity for investors or buyers looking to get cheap.
Yeah. Now, if you look at days in MLS, this is quick and easy, right? Detached single family, things are moving pretty consistently with where they were last year. Only 42 days in MLS. It's quick and it's turning fast. You get to the attached market. There are some huge outliers here, but 62 days, you're talking 50% more days in MLS in the attached market. Superior hit 109 days.
Yeah.
It is absolutely the longest one you can find. Now, let's talk about price range.
So let's kind of just start at the top. We did have some nice, and the number of solds are pretty nice. 7.3+ million sales. That's terrific. But we're still sitting with a ton of inventory in that 3+ million. And then it is to be kind of creeped down. We're seeing some nice gains in that 2.5 to 3 million. We had a nice month-over-month sales. Even year-over-year, we had some nice jumps in there. Where we're seeing a little sluggishness is that really 1.5 to 2.5 million. And that's because those folks are often using some type of financing. And that's just getting, it's just still really expensive, as you know, as a lender. That's still expensive. So we're just seeing a little bit of stagnation there and a little bit less sales. While inventory is kind of mixed. Some parts are going up, some parts are going down. But what we're really seeing is there's just less sales in that higher price point. Whereas we did have a good month for that 1 to 1.5 million, a nice little 8% increase. That's a significant increase, especially given that some inventories come off the market in that segment. We're down 8% in inventory, but we're also up percent in sales. So that's a good sign. Now, when we get really under that $1 million mark, it starts getting a little bit more interesting. We're seeing the sellers in that 600,000 to $1 million. They're pulling things off. That's where those big decreases are coming from on the active side. And then when we're on the sold side, we've also seen some nice increases in that 6 to 800,000. That 800 to $1 million. That's it's just an interesting price band because folks, that's kind of that pushing price band of that step up, or hey, I'm selling my house and then making that big step up to that luxury. We're just not seeing a lot of trade up opportunity right now. It's just not really the market for it because your current sale isn't going to go as hopeful as great as you would think, with where rates are. So it's not quite yet a good trade up market. We could see that happen if rates decrease and the lower end picks up, but we're just waiting to see what happens there.
All right, so I'm going to break these down for you separately. Detached single family, pretty structured, pretty straightforward. Under $1 million, it definitely is going to be a place where your buyers are going to compete more, right? Under 3 months of inventory, but it is still very much a buyer-favored market. It's fairly balanced is what I would consider, right? Now you get to $1 million, $1.5 million, we get into that market where buyers are just starting to get the edge. Anything over $1.5 million, your buyers, unless they're looking for like a primo perfect product, they have a lot of negotiating power. Now, if you get into the attached market, it's very much buyers have the upper hand in every single marketplace. The luxury feels like luxury in the detached market. I think that all being said, days in MLS obviously can be lower if it's a really cool, nice product, and that's both ways. But it's just taking a lot longer to sell the attached. We already talked about that.
Yep.
All right,
now,
let's talk about average sales price.
Sales price. This is always a tough one. We have over this last year, we have decrease in detached, right? But considering what the attached market's done and what other counties have done around us, Boulder County is still very resilient when we look at our overall change, and looking at that TTM change, that far right column on the bottom. That's really just saying, hey, in the last 12 months, how much have we changed compared to the last 12 months? And it's really showing we have decreased in some areas, but overall, we haven't decreased that much.
No, I think
and
stable.
It's a stable,
right?
a stable slide, but it's really forcing the market to correct on, hey, the house needs a lot of work. You're not going to get those premium dollars. And your buyer can ask for those repairs to be done because the seller has the capital to do so. So we're seeing a lot of that is, getting those higher ticket items done. So it's not being taken on by the buyer who's going to be, putting their whole down payment, a little bit less cash on hand.
Yeah, if we talk about attached market, this is one where we're really feeling that pinch, right? So year over year, you're seeing a dramatic decrease in sales price across all of these markets. Now, I say dramatic. If you look at the trailing 12-month number or the year-over-year number, they might be a little misleading. I mean, we really truly are kind of pushing down 10% in most of these markets. City of Boulder has sold some really cool luxury stuff. So year over year, that number is not making a ton of sense right now. But if you look at the lower end price stuff, it's doing exactly what everything in the county is doing. assume, 8 to 15% drop in sales price in the last year. It's brutal.
It is. It really is. Now, looking at our units sold, this is just a nice, easy graph. If you're going to shoot a video, feel free to pull this out of our slide deck, which is down below.
Yeah.
There we go. Get my hand on the screen. And what we're going to see here is we're up in August. So this is actually a decent sign. We saw our June, July, and August all beat 2024 numbers. Where we're feeling the pressure and the negative sentiment in the market is because of how many listings are sitting out there and just that high inventory. We're all really optimistic, hoping rates continue where they are. You guys are all tracking them. If we can keep these rates chasing them down, September through, really mid-November, we're going to have a great window of opportunity for your buyers to get in with all the negotiating power and those lower rates. So again,
third and fourth quarter is just such a cool time for a buyer. The sellers really are front loaded where all their opportunity is, and this is the time where you can get a lot of deals, and I think that's great. If you look at list sales price, it kind of tells you the same thing. The biggest thing here that I think you need to look at, right? There's a lot of information on the slide. The biggest thing is we're 0.5% lower than we were this time last year. For the third year in a row, we're at these very flat, stable markets. This just doesn't take into account concessions or price drops, which is really misleading in the data set. But what this tells us is it's just even easier as a buyer. So let your buyers know. Get out there, get active before rates come down too much and then the flood of buyers come back in the marketplace. It's a great opportunity to buy real estate. You heard it from us, right? That's what we've got for you today.
We talk about windows of opportunity. Here we go.
That's right.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in, watching the video with us. On behalf of Land Title, Anthony and I, we just want to say thank you, and we look forward to working with you soon.
Thanks. Bye.